Hello everyone, I'm Teddy, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to delve into a shocking and disturbing case that will leave you speechless. Imagine being a 10-year-old boy, waking up to a typical morning, only to discover that your entire family has been brutally murdered. The sheer terror and trauma that Jonathan Candy experienced on that fateful day is something that no one should ever have to go through. The Candy Family Massacre. It was a day that started like any other for Jonathan. He woke up, got dressed, and came out of his room expecting to see his family bustling around the house. But what he saw was a scene from a horror movie. His father, mother, and 3 older brothers were all lying in a pool of blood, their lives brutally taken away. The young boy was left alone, traumatized, and wondering why this had happened to his family. A normal American family. The Candy family seemed like any other normal American family. They lived in a cozy home, had a loving relationship, and were respected members of their community. But behind closed doors, something was brewing. A darkness that would ultimately lead to the devastating events that unfolded. The investigation. As the police began to investigate the massacre, they were left with more questions than answers. Who could have committed such a heinous crime? Was it a random act of violence, or was there something more sinister at play? The authorities scoured the crime scene looking for any clues that might lead them to the killer. But as they dug deeper, they discovered that the truth was far more complex and disturbing than they had initially thought. As the investigation continued, it became clear that the Candy family was not as perfect as they seemed. Secrets and lies began to surface, revealing a web of deceit that went far beyond the family's idyllic facade. The police were faced with a daunting task, unraveling the tangled threads of the family's dark past to uncover the truth behind the massacre. The aftermath. The Candy Family Massacre sent shockwaves through the community, leaving friends, family, and neighbors stunned and grief-stricken. The trauma that Jonathan experienced that day would stay with him forever, a constant reminder of the horror that he had witnessed. As we explore this twisted case, we'll examine the events leading up to the massacre, the investigation that followed, and the devastating aftermath that left a young boy's life forever changed. Let's dive deeper into this heartbreaking and frightening story and explore the complexities of the human psyche that led to this unimaginable tragedy. The All-American Family Next Door. The Candy family was the epitome of the All-American Family Next Door. They were a family of 4 boys and 2 loving parents, living in a cozy home in a quiet cul-de-sac. From the outside, everything looked very normal, and no one would have ever suspected that anything strange was going on behind closed doors. As I delved deeper into the case, I couldn't help but feel a sense of disbelief. I kept asking Cooper to check in on Ethan, and I was calling Lindsay and messaging Dylan, but no one responded. I couldn't believe that a family that seemed so perfect could be hiding such a dark secret. A young, vibrant, and happy family. In an interview with the couple back in 2022, they spoke about their favorite bakery in Yukon during a Discovering Oklahoma episode. They came across as a young, vibrant, and happy family, full of life and love. It was hard to imagine that just a few years later their lives would be shattered in such a tragic and horrific way. The neighbors' shock. Even the neighbors who saw and interacted with the Candy family almost every day never suspected that anything horrible was going on in their home. They were a picture-perfect family, living at the end of the cul-de-sac, and their sudden and violent demise left the entire community in shock. As we continue to explore this twisted case, we'll examine the events leading up to the massacre, the investigation that followed, and the aftermath that left a young boy's life forever changed. The Candy family may have seemed like the perfect all-American family, but as we'll see, appearances can be deceiving. Let's take a closer look at the family dynamics and the relationships between the Candy family members to try to understand what could have led to such a horrific act of violence. I'm still trying to process the shocking revelation that has left this community reeling. The Candy family, who seemed so perfect, so loving, and so full of life, were brutally murdered by the one person they trusted the most, the father and husband Jonathan Candy. I've spoken to people who knew the family, and they all described them as a loving and close-knit family. they would often visit the local bakery, where they were known for their love of carrot cake and cannoli. The owners of the bakery would often save them the best treats, and they would chat with the family about their day. But the darkest part of this story is not the fact that they were murdered, but that the person who committed the heinous act was the one who was supposed to love and protect them. Jonathan Candy, the husband and father, took away the lives of his own family members. The same man who was supposed to provide for them, support them, and keep them safe, is the one who ended their lives. It's hard to comprehend how someone who seemed so normal, so loving, and so devoted to his family could commit such a horrific act. The neighbors and friends who knew the family described them as a happy family, with no signs of trouble or conflict. The father and kids seemed to get along well, and there was no indication of any problems. The fact that Jonathan Candy took his own life after murdering his family only adds to the senseless tragedy of this event. It's a stark reminder that even the most seemingly perfect families can be hiding secrets and struggles that can lead to devastating consequences. As we try to make sense of this tragedy, we're left with more questions than answers. What drove Jonathan Candy to commit such a heinous act? Was there a history of violence or abuse in the family? And how could someone who seemed so loving and devoted to his family turn against them in such a brutal way? Jonathan Candy, the 42-year-old man from Yukon, Oklahoma, was known to everyone as a family man. He was a loving father, husband, and friend, always willing to lend a helping hand to those in need. No one expected that he would be capable of committing such a heinous act. A friendly and helpful neighbor. The kids in the neighborhood loved playing with Jonathan's kids, and they would often swim at his house. He was the kind of neighbor who would mow your lawn, take care of your family, and be there for you whenever you needed him. He was a pillar of the community, always willing to help out. A part-time employee with a big impact. Jonathan worked part-time at the Paycom Center, one of Yukon's largest arenas, where he would help with events like concerts and sports tournaments. He had been working on the recent NBA games, and everyone in the area was excited to see the Oklahoma City Thunder bring home the trophy. Although he only worked part-time, his jokes and laughter always brought life to the arena. A high school sweetheart. Jonathan studied at Bishop McGuinness Catholic High School, where he met his sweetheart, Lindsay Terry. Lindsay grew up in Prague, Oklahoma, and the two of them got married after graduation. They seemed like the perfect couple, with a loving family and a strong sense of community. It's hard to reconcile the Jonathan Candy that everyone knew with the person who committed such a horrific act. The investigation is ongoing, and we'll continue to follow the story to try to understand what drove him to do the unthinkable. A happy family. Lindsay Terry, a beautiful young lady with a love for laughter, was swept off her feet by Jonathan Candy's goofy charm and jokes. Their marriage seemed to be a perfect blend of love and laughter with no signs of trouble or abuse. They had 4 sons, and their Facebook page was filled with happy family photos, showcasing their seemingly perfect life. A devoted father. Jonathan always told his relatives and friends that his family and children were his entire world. He was a devoted father, and his kids looked happy and lived like average American kids. There was no indication of any problems in their family life. But on April 22, 2024, something unimaginable happened. The youngest son, whose name has been withheld for privacy reasons, woke up to a scene that no child should ever have to face. He had slept through the night with a box fan blowing in his direction, so he didn't hear anything unusual. The only thing he remembered hearing was the fire alarm that went off during the night, but he went back to sleep soon after. At around 9:30 a.m., he stepped out of his room, expecting it to be like any other day. But what he saw was a scene of unimaginable horror. His entire family was lying in a pool of blood. The happy family that everyone thought they knew was torn apart by a tragedy that would haunt the community forever. On April 22, 2024, a horrific tragedy occurred in Yukon, Oklahoma. The 10-year-old son of Jonathan and Lindsay Candy called 911 to report that he had found his entire family dead. When the police arrived at the Candy family home near Southwest 29th Street and Czech Hall Road, they were shocked by what they saw. The police found 39-year-old Lindsay Candy and her sons, 18-year-old Dylan, 14-year-old Ethan, and 12-year-old Lucas, all shot and killed. The suspected killer, 42-year-old Jonathan Candy, was also found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The investigation revealed that this was a case of murder-suicide, with Jonathan allegedly hunting down and killing his wife and children one by one, except for the youngest son. The community was in shock, trying to understand why this tragedy occurred. The Candy family was known for their happiness and love for each other. Jonathan was a devoted father, and Lindsay was a loving mother. The children were happy and well-adjusted. The sole survivor of the massacre was the 10-year-old son who made the call to 911. The community rallied around him, offering their support and love during this difficult time. An interview with Oklahoma officials has revealed more details about the tragic murder-suicide that occurred in the Candy family home. The investigation has found that 2 of the victims' bodies were found upstairs, while the other 2 were found downstairs. There were no signs of a struggle at the crime scene, which adds to the confusion surrounding the events. In most cases of murder-suicide, it is unusual for the killer to spare just one person and kill everyone else. This has raised questions about why Jonathan Candy decided to spare the youngest son. Did he come to his senses at the last minute, or did he have a special relationship with this child? Unfortunately, these questions may remain unanswered as there is no one to ask. The relatives of the Candy family have decided it's best to leave the young boy out of any further investigations, realizing how hard this would be on him. This means that the motive behind Jonathan's actions may never be fully understood. Dr. Joni Johnston, a clinical and forensic psychologist in charge of the investigation, described the entire scenario as shocking. She has never witnessed a case where a parent murders some of their children and lets one live. Friends and neighbors who saw Jonathan before the murders reported that everything seemed fine. There was nothing unusual or out of place. His colleagues mentioned that he was at the Thunder Pelicans playoff game just hours before the tragic murders occurred. Nobody is sure if there were any warning signs that the people around the family should have picked up on. The investigation into the Candy family murder-suicide continues, but the motive behind the tragic events remains a mystery. There was no sign of domestic violence, which is often a common factor in such cases. The only clue is that there may have been an altercation between Jonathan and Lindsay on the night of the murders, but the nature of their argument is unknown. A loving father's descent into madness. Jonathan seemed like a loving and supportive father, but what could have driven him to commit such a heinous act? It's possible that something triggered a sudden and extreme reaction, leading him to kill his wife and 3 of his children. The fact that he spared the youngest son only adds to the confusion. Speculation and theories. One possibility is that Jonathan killed his wife in the heat of an argument and then, in a twisted attempt to protect his children from the consequences, decided to kill them as well. This theory suggests that the murders were not premeditated and that Jonathan's actions were driven by a distorted sense of protection and a desire to avoid leaving his children without parents. Investigators are exploring other potential factors that may have contributed to Jonathan's actions. They are looking into whether the family was experiencing financial crises, which can lead to depression and feelings of hopelessness, particularly in men who may feel the weight of responsibility on their shoulders. Additionally, they are investigating whether Jonathan had any underlying mental health challenges that he may have been hiding from his family and friends. As the investigation continues, the community is left to grapple with the senseless tragedy that has occurred. The Candy family's friends and neighbors are struggling to come to terms with the fact that a loving father and husband could commit such a horrific act. The search for answers will likely be a long and difficult one, but it's essential to understanding what drove Jonathan to commit this heinous crime. The tragic events surrounding the Candy family have highlighted the importance of seeking help for mental health challenges. Unfortunately, there is still a stigma associated with seeking help, and those who don't often end up making terrible mistakes that can have devastating consequences. Depression in men can manifest differently than in women. Men may struggle to mentally process and vocally express their feelings, leading them to isolate themselves and become irritable and edgy. This can be misinterpreted by families, friends, and loved ones, who may not recognize the signs of depression and suicidal tendencies. When people don't seek help for mental health issues in a timely manner, they can reach a stage of depression where they lose all hope and believe that the best solution is to take their own life, sometimes taking others with them. This is a tragic reminder of the importance of seeking help and support. On Lindsay Candy's Facebook page, a childhood friend, Cami Cruz, shared fond memories of their friendship. They were both cheerleaders in church and sang together in the choir. Cami recalled a particular incident where they hid in a treehouse and fell asleep, causing their parents to worry and call the police. This story highlights the bright and playful nature of Lindsay, who will be deeply missed by those who knew her. The motive behind the murders remains unknown, leaving the community with more questions than answers. As the investigation continues, it's essential to remember the importance of seeking help for mental health challenges and to break down the stigma associated with it. Cami Cruz's tribute to Lindsay Candy on Facebook highlights the special bond they shared. Despite not being in constant contact, they could always pick up where they left off, a testament to the strength of their friendship. Cruz's words convey the depth of her devastation upon hearing the news of the Candy family's tragic death. Cruz's post also celebrates Lindsay's life, describing her as so loved and special to many people. She notes how fiercely loved Lindsay was by her boys and how she brought laughter to every conversation in the lives of those around her. Lindsay's impact on her family, friends, and community is clear, and her memory will be cherished by all who knew her. Dylan Candy, the eldest son of Jonathan and Lindsay, is remembered as a social and passionate individual. His love for drumming and music was evident to all, and he was an integral part of the Mustang High School marching band. After graduating in May 2023, Dylan attended Oklahoma Baptist University, where he joined the Bison Brigade, the university's marching band. His talent and dedication earned him a spot playing the complex first bass drum, a testament to his skills. Brian Stackhouse, the director of athletic bands at OBU, remembers Dylan as an amazing young man with a big heart. He describes Dylan as always happy, friendly, and approachable, even on tough days. This tribute captures the essence of Dylan's personality and spirit, which will be deeply missed by all who knew him. Dylan's legacy. Brian Stackhouse's tribute to Dylan Candy highlights his exceptional dedication to the team, his perseverance, and his ability to inspire his peers. The memory of Dylan's excitement during band camp, when he was told he had a solo in the drum line, is a testament to his passion and enthusiasm. The memorial display of his bass drum and uniform will serve as a reminder of his contributions to the band and his family. Ethan's vibrant spirit. Ethan Candy, the 14-year-old son, is remembered as an active, athletic, and energetic young boy who excelled in baseball. His coach, TJ Armstrong, fondly recalls Ethan's natural talent, inspiring spirit, and infectious smile. Ethan's friends, including Cooper Armstrong and Wyatt Livy, are still struggling to come to terms with his loss. A memorial bench at the Mustang Youth Sports Complex will honor his memory and the impact he had on those around him. Lucas's joyful nature. Lucas Candy, the 12-year-old son, is remembered as a bright, joyful kid who loved to play outdoors and make new friends. He would often play with other children during Ethan's soccer practice, filling the air with laughter and energy. His tragic loss will be deeply felt by all who knew him. The youngest survivor's tragic reality. The most heartbreaking aspect of this tragedy is that the youngest child and sole survivor of the Candy family will have to grow up knowing that his entire family was murdered by his father. At just 10 years old, he will have to navigate the trauma and grief of this event, a burden no child should ever have to bear. A future without family. The 10-year-old survivor of the Candy family tragedy faces a daunting future without his immediate family. The loss of his parents and siblings in one night has changed his life forever. He may struggle to find closure and answers to the questions that will inevitably haunt him. This burden is too heavy for a child to bear, and it's heartbreaking to think about the emotional and psychological scars he may carry. Community support. Fortunately, the community has come together to support the young boy, providing him with emotional and psychological support through social workers and extended family members. A GoFundMe page has been set up to assist with his upkeep, education, and future needs. The outpouring of support has been overwhelming, and it's heartwarming to see the community rally around him during this difficult time. A statement from Jonathan's family. Jonathan's family has released a statement expressing their confusion and devastation. They, too, are left with unanswered questions and a deep sense of loss. The news has been shocking to those who knew the family, and it's clear that the ripple effects of this tragedy will be felt for a long time. A neighbor's perspective. One of the Candy family's neighbors has spoken out, still trying to process the news. The sense of shock and disbelief is palpable, and it's clear that the community is still reeling from the tragedy. As the days go by, the reality of the situation will slowly sink in, and the road to healing will be long and difficult. Neighbors and friends share fond memories. Michael Burham, a 68-year-old neighbor, is still trying to come to terms with the loss of the Candy family. He misses them dearly, and finds it hard to believe they're gone. Another neighbor, Brian Graham, remembers Jonathan as a handy and helpful person who was always willing to lend a hand. TJ Armstrong, Ethan's coach, chooses to remember Jonathan as a kind and thankful person who always gave hugs. His wife, Rhonda Armstrong, who knew the family for over 3 years, recalls how they could always make her smile and laugh, even on her worst days. She fondly remembers Lindsay's enthusiastic cheering at Ethan's baseball games. A happy family, a tragic end. Everyone who knew the Candy family describes them as kind, sweet, and happy. This makes the tragedy even more difficult to comprehend. Investigators are working to uncover any clues that might have led to Jonathan's actions, but so far they have found no indication of poor mental health. Breaking the stigma of mental health. The authorities are using this incident to raise awareness about the importance of seeking help for mental health issues. They emphasize the need to break the stigma associated with seeking help, as Jonathan's case highlights how those who appear happy and fine on the outside can be struggling with deep inner trauma. The investigation continues, but one thing is clear: the Candy family's tragic story serves as a reminder to prioritize mental health and to seek help when needed. A call to compassion and connection. In the wake of the Candy family tragedy, the community is reminded of the importance of compassion and connection. Everyone is going through their own struggles, and it's crucial to take the time to talk to family and friends, ensuring that negative emotions don't build up. Support services available. Authorities are offering support groups and counseling services to help people process their emotions and come to terms with the news. This tragedy has left everyone reeling, and it's essential to prioritize the well-being of those affected. Remembering the Candy family. The Candy family, loved by many, will forever be dear in the hearts of those who knew them. As family and friends grieve the loss of John, Jonathan, Lindsay, Dylan, Ethan, and Lucas, they also recognize the need to support the surviving family member. Prioritizing the survivor's well-being. The priority now is to ensure the survivor receives as much support and love as possible. The community is coming together to provide a safety net for the young boy, and it's heartening to see the outpouring of love and support. Conclusion: that's the end of today's episode. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video if you haven't already. We'll see you in the next video, where we'll explore more twisted cases.